It's time to start.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome to Stanley's Stinkers, a unique look at college football where we pick the losers. That's right, the losers. Each week we'll look at 20 of the biggest games, we'll break down the teams, we'll analyze the coaches, and we might even flirt with the cheerleaders. But in the end, we'll predict the losers, or in this case, the stinkers in each of the contests. Stay tuned because this week's games are coming up. With more upsets and surprises, the 2012 college football season got really interesting last week and entertaining. But with that entertainment, there came another hit to our record. We were 13-7 last week. That brings our overall record to 76%. But as you know, we don't shy away from the big games, and we do pick the upsets. With that said, here are the games that show up this week on the Stinkometer. Middle Tennessee State at Mississippi State. The Bullpups from Starkville are enjoying 2012 about as much as anyone can. Coach Dan Mullins has Mississippi State sitting at 6-0 and ranked 12th in the new BCS standings. The Bullpups are only giving up an average of 16 points per game on defense while scoring twice that many on offense. Well, if that keeps up, they'll win every game. But then there's this group of Raiders from Middle Tennessee who want to break up the party. And why not? The Blue Raiders already have a win against Georgia Tech to their credit this year, and a win against a ranked team would, why, that'd shock the country. Statistically, the Blue Raiders have a chance, but don't expect it. Stanley Stinker, Middle Tennessee. Georgia at Kentucky. It's been a week since the silver-slacked canines were slapped around on national TV, and that should be enough time for Georgia to lick their wounds. If not, a trip to Commonwealth Stadium to play Kentucky might just help. The Wildcats' lone victory this year came against a Mid-America Conference team, and injuries are beginning to decimate their ranks. Look for the Gershel Express of Gurley and Marshall to have a big day. How about them dogs? Stanley Stinker, Kentucky. Auburn at Vanderbilt. Well, there may be an early frost coming in the loveliest village on the plains. Things are getting quite chilly between the striped cats and the fan base as Auburn has fallen and just can't get up. A lost Ole Miss dropped AU to 1-5. The good news is it should be easier this week with a trip to Nashville, but don't count on it. Vandy held their own for most of the game against Florida last week, and the Gators had to count on tricks to pull off their win. If Auburn resorts to the same tricks, it could work, or it could backfire. It's hard to call this one, but Stanley Stinker is Auburn. Texas Tech and Texas Christian. Fans of the Auburn Tigers watched last week as former coach Tommy Tuberville orchestrated the beatdown of the year so far, stunning West Virginia in convincing manners. This week, the task will be to repeat the performance against TCU. Tech comes into the game ranked 4th nationally in passing offense and passing defense. That won't play well for TCU since their all-star quarterback ended his season early due to substance abuse problems. Statistically, this Texas Tech team looks like champions, but Tuberville proved at Auburn that he can win the big game and follow that up with a big loss. But times do change. Stanley Stinker, TCU. Virginia Tech at Clemson. Well, the Hokie Birds from Virginia Tech had to stage a huge comeback to salvage a win against Duke last week, and that may be the turning point Coach Frank Beamer needed. After 2 consecutive losses, Tech looked scrappy in the second half. Now Clemson is on the menu. Dabo Swinney's team has averaged 43 points on offense the last 3 weeks, but the defense has given up 37 points on average during that same stretch. It'll be easy to call an upset in this game, but the chances are that Clemson will score just enough to bring home the win. Stanley Stinker, Virginia Tech. Michigan State at Michigan. The Spartans of Michigan State have been on the classic roller coaster for the last few weeks, winning one week, then losing the next, winning one week, then losing the next, winning one week, you get the idea. With a loss last week in double overtime, the timing's just right for another win, but Michigan comes in with a pass defense that ranks in the top 3 in the nation and a quarterback who's shown steady improvement since an opening loss to Alabama. The winner of this game gets the Paul Bunyan Award, and it's been Michigan State the last 4 years. Not this time, though. Stanley Stinker, Michigan State. Well, all right, that is the first bunch of stinkers. Do we have more? Oh, yes, we do, including the big rivalry between Alabama and Tennessee, plus an upsets brewing in the swamp, and we'll look at how the Leprechauns match up against BYU. Those games and more coming up. Stanley Stinkers is a free service to college football fans thanks to our fine sponsors. Please take a minute and let them know you appreciate their help. This week's show is brought to you by Passion by Eve. It's a classy way to look at sensuality, from lotions to potions and even things that go buzz in the night. Contact one of the independent consultants to schedule a passion party at your house, or check them out on the web at passionbyeve.com. BuyAnythingCostumes.com. This is the one-stop shop for costumes for the kids and the adults, from scary to sultry and everywhere in between. Visit our sponsor page for the link and shop online for the biggest selection, anythingcostumes.com. By Russell Athletic. Browse through the hundreds of items online, including the new line of camouflage lingerie. The link is on our sponsors page. Russell Athletic. Sports gear for everyone and everywhere. And of course, you too could be a sponsor of Stanley Stinkers. Our latest figures show about 5,000 views each month and a base of viewers, male and female, between the ages of 25 and 45 on average. Whether you're a local company or a national business, you can benefit from increased exposure. At Stanley Stinkers, we specialize in exposing ourselves and those we care about. Well, all right, we've entered into the final segments of this week's show. We're almost at the point where we have upsets, but not yet. Alabama at Tennessee. This is the game that historically comes on the third Saturday in October. It's also a game that typically results in an Alabama win. But in rivalries like this, normal doesn't normally happen. The Crimson Tide defense is in the top 3 in every statistical category, and that will be a lot for Tennessee quarterback Tyler Bray to handle. The Riflemen held up well against Mississippi State, but this week's test is just too much for the team to endure. Stanley Stinker, Tennessee. Brigham Young at Notre Dame. The Leprechauns proved that good defense and a lot of luck go hand in hand last week in an overtime win against Stanford. This week, they hope that luck and defense holds up when the Cougars come prowling into South Bend. BYU does have a strong defense, and their offense has been showing promise. That is until freshman quarterback Taysom Hill went down with an injury last week, and he's done for the year. Notre Dame has not given up a rushing touchdown all year, and don't look for that to change this week. Stanley Stinker, BYU. LSU at Texas A&M. The Bayou Bengals answered their critics last week by stopping a South Carolina team that had appeared to be unstoppable. In doing so, LSU has regained some of their lost confidence, but confidence is something Texas A&M quarterback Johnny Manziel is overflowing with. The man they call Johnny Football scored 6 touchdowns and accounted for more than 500 yards in total offense a week ago on the road. The home crowd at Kyle Field wants an encore performance. The key to this game for LSU will be shutting down Johnny Football. The Bayou Bengals haven't seen anything like him all year, and they probably won't see a lot of him this week either as he runs right on past. Stanley Stinker in an upset, LSU. South Carolina at Florida. A stunned Sports Nation watched last week as South Carolina coach Steve Spurrier tossed his hat to the ground more than once. It's not something the head ball coach has done a lot of this year, thanks to a quarterback who seemed almost automatic, and the defense has been downright stingy. That is until they met LSU. Now the forlorn fowl has to regroup against the Swamp Lizards in a place that Spurrier called home for 12 years as a coach and 4 years as a player. But don't look for Florida fans to welcome him with open arms. Their team is ranked second in the BCS and riding an undefeated record in hopes of making it to the big game in Atlanta. On paper, these two teams are similar. The difference will be in the quarterback and the coach. In a classic, Stanley Stinker, Florida. And while we're at it, here are a few more games that show up this week on the Stinkometer. Colorado will lose to USC. Kansas State will get shot down by West Virginia. Miami will be blown away by FSU. Purdue will get boiled against Ohio State. Minnesota will be badgered by Washington. Baylor will get the horn against Texas. Boston College will be stung by Georgia Tech. Kansas State will lose to Oklahoma. Utah will leave it to the Beavers of Oregon State. And the payback from last year, Iowa State will be spun by Oklahoma State. Stanley Stinkers is intended for entertainment only. A free podcast and blog is always available online at stanleystinkers.com. You can also catch us in your favorite newspaper. Stanley Stinkers is produced by Gramagdala Broadcasting. Any rebroadcast reproduction, or other use of Stanley Stinker's podcast without the expressed written permission of me, Stanley Stinkowich, is very much appreciated. Join us again next week as we use reverse prognostication to predict the losers in college football's biggest games.
I do like SpongeBob.